What's up guys, Brian with Love Reviews. If you're new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button, it really helps me out. Welcome to my mess. What we're trying to do here is set up a dedicated virtual reality room. So we've got an HTC Vive headset and I've got a bunch of computer components, and so over the course of the next few days we're going to go ahead and set this up and show you how to configure and build everything to get running efficiently for virtual reality. Let's start by taking you on a tour of the space. As you can see, it's kind of a mess. So we've got this really odd room in our house when you come down the stairs. So the house is about 100 years old, and we've got this odd room that you really can't do much with. So my thought is, why not convert this to a sweet little virtual reality room? So what I've done so far is I've started to mount the lighthouse in the upper right hand corner there, and I've also got a lighthouse that I'm mounting up in here. We've got the HTC Vive headset, and I've also got the makings of a mess, or also known as a computer. Here's what happens. So to get you up to speed where we're at right now, I'm building most of this out of my old cryptocurrency mining parts. So you can see I've got a GTX 1070 over there, I've got a GTX 1070 over here. I've got this old mining motherboard that I was using. I picked up an Intel i7 9700K for this system because I want a pretty beefy processor. And I thought, oh, well, I'll just use one of my old mining motherboards because it supports Intel processors, but it doesn't support the 8th and 9th generation processors. So on post, it just starts and then stops. So I need to get a different motherboard. That's where we're at right now. Once I've got the motherboard, I can go ahead and start assembling the computer. That should go pretty easily. And once I have the computer set up and running, we can go ahead and start wiring the room and setting up the virtual reality components. I did start with, there's this TV on the wall. It's just an old 1080p TV that I happen to have left over from when we upgraded our theater. And then I'll drop a link in the description, but I just picked up this sound bar from Amazon. It's a Vizio. It's rated one of the best sound bars that's inexpensive. So I figure most of the time when we're using virtual reality, we're going to be using a headset so we get that immersive sound. But the TV and soundbar are cool for people that are just watching me make a fool out of myself when I'm actually doing VR. So I think that'll work out well. We've also got a couple of other things. So I've got a weight vest, and then I've got some wrist straps just to get a little bit extra. You know, you might as well get some exercise out of some VR while you're doing it, right? Now, I've got no shortage of spare components. A lot of people have asked me for an update on my cryptocurrency mining. It's actually all shut down right now because, well, prices kind of fell out the last 6 to 12 months. And then on top of that, it's just hard running a large cryptocurrency mining operation in your house. So I've got a 13 card rig over here that just has a few GTX 1070s left in it. I've got a couple Antminer S9s over here. A bunch of solid state drives. This isn't even all of them. I've got a couple dozen solid state drives. We've got, of course, probably 6 1200 watt power supplies. And enough cables to wrap around the moon. And then this box is completely filled with GPUs. So it's stacked several deep. So I figure I've got plenty of components. I built a video editing system upstairs that has 3 GTX 1070s in it to do all my YouTube video editing and effects and things like that. We'll set up this VR system, which VR, unfortunately, you can't run SLI. And so I'm going to take one of my 1070 Ti's and we'll start there. We'll see. We might upgrade to a 2070 Super. Those are kind of the new performance cards that are kind of killing everything. So we might do that later, but for now I think a single 1070 will work just fine. Trust me, I know this looks like a disaster, and that's largely because it is. I was able to pick up a HTC Vive headset, VR headset, off of Reddit for pretty inexpensively, and then I swapped out the lenses with the Samsung Gear VR lenses. They're supposed to be a little bit, they have better clarity, and they also get rid of the kind of the God rays and the lens distortion that you have with the default lenses. They do have a little bit more barrel distortion, which is sort of that curvature around the edges, but you can correct for that by uploading a custom lens profile, which, you know, maybe I'll do an entire video just on that because it's kind of an involved process. So we've got the HTC Vive. It's not the Pro, just the regular Vive. I've got obviously the controllers. We've got a couple of GTX 1070s. Obviously you saw my mining setup. This is a 1070 Mini. I've got another 1070 Mini that's a Ti, so I'll probably throw that in here. You can't really use SLI because with a stereoscopic display, most of the games that are built for VR and Steam itself doesn't support SLI. So you actually notice a bunch of jittering if you try and run an SLI setup, which is unfortunate because I've got plenty of GPU horsepower I could throw at this thing. Next up, so we've got this pretty beefy, it's a Be Quiet tower. So we'll use that for our cooling of our Intel i7 9700K processor. The K means that it's an unlocked processor, so I'm able to overclock it. Some people have been getting some pretty insane overclocks out of these. Got 16 gigs of DDR4. The problem I ran into is I've got this MSI Z170A gaming motherboard, which has three-way SLI. I had this because it has multiple PCI Express slots, so I was able to set up a 7-card mining rig with this. And so I figured I'll just reuse this and I'll throw a new processor in. I thought since it was LGA 1151 socket type that it would just be plug and play, but it isn't. So unfortunately this board doesn't support the Intel 8th and 9th generation i7s, and so I had to pick up a new motherboard that's on its way. If anybody has this problem, here's what happened. So I popped in the new processor, and when I hook up the motherboard and the CPU power, what you can see happens is the lights fire up on the motherboard and then it turns off immediately. And so if I swap this processor out, let's go ahead and do it. We'll pop an older i7 in here. I've got a bunch laying around. And when we drop that guy in here, you'll notice it posts and boots just fine. So obviously we'll turn it off so we don't fry the processor, but that narrowed it down to being a motherboard issue, incompatible with the processor that I wanted to put in there. So that is on its way today. Once that's here, we can continue with our PC build, which I don't expect to take very long. Actually, I had this all assembled. I had it all wired up. It was beautiful. Everything was routed nicely. And then when I went to fire it up, it didn't work. It did exactly what you just saw. So, you know, that's kind of how computer building goes sometimes. You run into these problems, you troubleshoot, and then you try and find a solution. So we've got that. I've got a nice 1200 watt power supply, which I used to use for my mining rigs. And then I picked up this case on Amazon pretty inexpensively. It's got nice cooling. It has 3 fans up front, 1 in the back, and it should be a nice blow-through design that should keep everything nice and cool. And I think that's about it. So we're going to mount the lighthouses, like I said, in the upper corners. We'll go through a whole tutorial on that. We've got the old TV and sound bar. We've got the Vizio sound bar, which I think will be good for just observing people playing the games. And then if we need it, I have a couple 1 terabyte Samsung SSDs. And if we need it, I've also got a couple 8 terabyte external drives. I've also got 4 or 5 more 1 terabyte SSDs if we want to get crazy and download a whole bunch of games. Leave me some comments and questions down below. Otherwise, look forward to the multi-part build. Thanks.